The wind howled like a grieving widow, tearing through the pines as I clutched the ring on my finger, its cold metal biting into my skin. I was standing in the snow, staring at the rusted door of the old cold storage warehouse, knowing she was inside with her. My heart screamed louder than the storm, but I couldn't turn back. Not now, not ever. My name is Ellie Harper and I'm 27, a mechanic from a nowhere town in upstate New York, where the winters are as brutal as the secrets people keep. I'd spent 3 years building a life with Mara, my fiancée, the woman who taught me that love could be a quiet promise whispered over morning coffee. But now, in the middle of this frozen wilderness, I was chasing a truth that could shatter everything. Mara had been missing for 3 days, and the last clue led me here, to this godforsaken place, where the air smelled of rust and regret. I pushed the door open, the hinges screaming in protest, and stepped into the dim, cavernous space. The cold storage warehouse was a relic, abandoned since the factory shut down a decade ago. Frost clung to the walls and my breath hung in clouds as I scanned the shadows. Then I saw them, Mara, her auburn hair catching the faint light, and Quinn, the stranger who'd stormed into our lives like a wildfire. They were standing too close, Mara's hands gripping Quinn's arms, their faces inches apart. My stomach twisted, but I couldn't look away. Mara! My voice cracked, echoing off the metal walls. They froze, turning to face me, and in that moment I saw everything. The guilt in Mara's eyes, the defiance in Quinn's. The ring on my finger felt heavier than ever, a cruel reminder of the promises we'd made. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my throat tightened, trapping the words. Mara stepped toward me, her coat dusted with snow. "Ellie, I can explain," she said, her voice trembling but soft, like she was trying to soothe a wounded animal. "Explain? How do you explain disappearing for days, leaving me to scour the county, only to find her here with her?" Quinn, all sharp edges and untamed energy, crossed her arms and leaned against a crate. She was younger than me, maybe 25, with short, dark hair and eyes that burned like she'd seen too much of the world's cruelty. "She's here because of me," Quinn said, her voice low and unapologetic. "You want to know why? Then listen." I didn't want to listen. I wanted to grab Mara and drag her back to our apartment, to the life we'd planned, the wedding, the house, the dog we'd name after her favorite poet. But something in Quinn's gaze held me, a raw honesty that made my anger falter. I stood there, snow melting into my boots as she began to speak. Quinn told me about her past, her voice steady but laced with pain. She'd grown up in foster care, bouncing from home to home, never finding a place to belong. 3 months ago, she'd come to our town, working odd jobs at the diner where Mara waitressed. They'd met over late-night shifts, bonding over shared stories of loss and dreams too big for a small town. Quinn said she hadn't meant to fall for Mara, but some things like love don't ask for permission. Mara's eyes stayed on me as Quinn spoke, pleading for understanding. "I didn't want to hurt you," Mara whispered. "But I was scared, Ellie. Scared of what this means, of what I feel." Her words hit like a punch and I stumbled back, the cold wall pressing against my spine. "What do you feel?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Tell me, Mara. Tell me why you're here with her instead of home with me." She opened her mouth, but no words came. The silence was worse than any answer she could have given. Quinn stepped forward, her jaw tight. "She's here because I'm leaving," she said. "Tomorrow. I got a job in Seattle and I asked her to come with me. She said no, Ellie. She chose you." My heart lurched. Mara had chosen me? Then why was she here in this frozen tomb, holding Quinn like she was the one slipping away? I looked at Mara, searching for the woman I loved, the one who'd laughed with me under summer stars. But all I saw was confusion, her eyes torn between two truths. "I need to know," I said, stepping closer, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do you love her?" Mara's lips trembled, and for a moment I thought she'd break. But she didn't answer, not yet. Instead, she reached for my hand, her fingers cold but familiar. "Come with me," she said. "Let's talk. Just us." I followed her deeper into the warehouse, leaving Quinn behind, her silhouette fading into the shadows. The air grew colder, the walls closing in, and I wondered if I was walking toward salvation or ruin. Mara led me to a corner of the warehouse where crates were stacked haphazardly, their wooden edges splintered and dusted with frost. The faint glow of a lantern she'd left on the floor cast long shadows, making her face look both familiar and foreign. My heart pounded as I waited for her to speak, to unravel the knot of questions choking me. "Ellie," she began, her voice soft but heavy, "I've been a coward." She sat on a crate, pulling her coat tighter around her, and I saw the weight of her guilt in the slump of her shoulders. "I didn't know how to tell you about Quinn. About me." I stayed standing, my hands shoved into my pockets to hide their trembling. "So tell me now," I said, sharper than I meant. "What's going on, Mara? Why her? Why now?" She looked down, her fingers twisting the scarf around her neck. "I've always known I was different," she said. "Even before I met you. I loved you, Ellie, I still do. But meeting Quinn, it woke something up in me. Something I didn't know how to face." Her words cut deeper than the winter wind. I'd spent years believing we were enough, that our love was a fortress against the world's chaos. But now, hearing her confess to feelings I couldn't compete with, I felt the ground shift beneath me. "So you love her too?" I asked, my voice breaking. Mara's eyes met mine, glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know," she admitted. "I care about her. She's like a storm, Ellie. She's fearless, reckless, everything I'm not. But you're my home." "Then why are you here?" I snapped, my anger spilling over. "If I'm your home, why are you hiding in this freezing hellhole with her?" Mara flinched, but she didn't look away. "Because I'm scared of losing you," she said. "And I'm scared of losing myself. Quinn's leaving and I came to say goodbye. But it's more than that. I needed to know if I could let her go. I wanted to shake her, to demand she choose, but the vulnerability in her eyes stopped me. Mara had always been the steady one, the one who planned our future with careful precision. Now she was unraveling, and I didn't know how to hold her together. Before I could respond, a noise echoed from the other side of the warehouse, a sharp clatter like metal hitting the floor. Mara tensed and I turned, my pulse racing. "Quinn!" I called, stepping toward the sound. Quinn appeared from the shadows, her face pale. "We're not alone," she whispered, her eyes darting to the far wall. "I saw someone outside through the window. They were watching us." My stomach dropped. This place was miles from anywhere, surrounded by nothing but snow and trees. Who the hell would be out here? I asked, my breath catching. Quinn's jaw tightened. "I don't know, but they weren't friendly. I saw a flashlight, and they bolted when I moved closer." Mara grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "Ellie, we need to go. Now." But I couldn't move. Not yet. The ring on my finger burned, a reminder of the promises tying me to Mara, even as doubt gnawed at me. "No," I said, my voice firm. "We're not running until I get answers. Mara, you owe me that much." She nodded, her face a mix of fear and resolve. "Okay," she said. "But we need to be careful. If someone's out there." Quinn cut in, her voice low. "I'll check the perimeter. Stay here." She grabbed a crowbar from a nearby crate and disappeared into the darkness, her footsteps echoing. Mara and I stood in silence, the lantern flickering between us. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said finally. "But I've been lying to myself, Ellie. About who I am. About what I want." "Then tell me," I said, stepping closer. "Who are you, Mara? Because I don't know anymore." She took a shaky breath, her eyes searching mine. "I'm still figuring that out," she said. "But I know I love you. I don't know if it's enough." Her words hung in the air, sharp and heavy, and I felt the world tilt. Before I could respond, a loud crash shattered the silence, followed by Quinn's voice shouting from outside. "Ellie! Mara! Get out here!" We ran toward the sound, the cold air biting at my face as we pushed through the warehouse door. Outside, the snow was falling harder, blurring the world into a white haze. Quinn stood near the tree line, her crowbar raised, staring at a figure disappearing into the storm. "Who was that?" I demanded, my heart racing. Quinn's eyes were wild, her breath coming in sharp bursts. "I don't know," she said. "But they left this." She held up a crumpled photograph, half buried in the snow. It was a picture of Mara and me taken last summer at the lake, our arms around each other, smiling. Someone had drawn a red X over my face. The photograph trembled in Quinn's hand, the red X glaring like a wound against the faded colors of that summer day. My stomach churned as I stared at it, the memory of Mara's laugh by the lake now tainted by something sinister. "Where did you find this?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "By the trees," Quinn said, her eyes scanning the dark forest. "Whoever it was, they dropped it when they ran. They're gone now, but we're not safe here." Mara's face was pale, her lips pressed tight. "Ellie," she whispered, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away, the weight of the ring on my finger anchoring me to a truth I wasn't ready to face. Someone was watching us, someone who knew me knew us. The wilderness around us felt alive, its shadows hiding threats I couldn't name. "We need to get back to town," I said, my breath clouding in the freezing air. "This place, it's not right." Quinn nodded, but Mara hesitated, her eyes darting between us. "What about the photo?" she asked. "What does it mean?" "It means someone's got a problem with me," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Or with us. Let's move." We trudged through the snow, the warehouse looming behind us like a forgotten ghost. Quinn led the way, her crowbar still in hand, while Mara stayed close, her silence louder than the storm. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of the past few weeks. Mara's late shifts, her distracted glances, the way she'd started locking her phone. Had someone been watching her too? Or was this about Quinn, the outsider who'd stirred up our small town's quiet prejudice? The path to my truck was a mile through the woods, and every snap of a twig made my heart lurch. Quinn kept her eyes on the trees, her movements sharp and deliberate, like a hunter. "You ever feel like you're being followed?" she asked, her voice low. "All the damn time," I muttered. Growing up queer in a place like this, you learn to sense the stares, the whispers. But this was different. This felt personal. Mara's hand brushed mine, tentative. "Ellie, I'm sorry," she said. "For everything. For dragging you into this." I wanted to believe her, to let her words soothe the ache in my chest, but the red X burned in my mind. "Save it," I said, softer than I meant. "Let's just get out of here." When we reached the truck, the windshield was covered in snow, but something else caught my eye. A scratch along the driver's side door, fresh and deliberate, like someone had dragged a key across it. "Son of a bitch," I hissed, running my fingers over the jagged line. Quinn crouched, inspecting the ground. "Tire tracks," she said, pointing to faint marks in the snow leading away from the truck. "Someone was here. Not long ago." Mara's breath hitched. "Ellie, what if they're still out there? Then we don't give them the chance to come back," I said, yanking the door open. "Get in." The drive back to town was tense, the truck's heater doing little to warm the chill between us. Mara sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window while Quinn sat in the back, her crowbar across her lap. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights following us through the storm. When we reached the diner, its neon sign flickering like a beacon, I pulled over. "Quinn, you're staying here," I said. "Mara and I need to talk. Alone." Quinn's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Be careful," she said, her eyes lingering on Mara before she stepped out into the snow. Inside the diner, the smell of coffee and grease grounded me, a reminder of the life Mara and I had built. We slid into a booth, the vinyl creaking under us. The place was nearly empty, just a trucker at the counter and a waitress wiping down tables. "Talk," I said, my voice low. "No more excuses, Mara. I deserve the truth." She nodded, her hands clasped tightly on the table. "I love you," she said, her voice breaking. "But I've been hiding part of myself." Quinn, she saw it before I did. She made me question everything, my choices, my future. I didn't mean to fall for her, but I did. Her words were a blade, slicing through the hope I'd clung to. "So what now?" I asked. "You're just gonna leave me? Leave us?" "No," she said quickly, reaching for my hand. "I don't want to lose you, Ellie. But I need to figure out who I am. I need time." Time. The word felt like a betrayal, as if the years we'd spent together meant nothing. I looked at the ring on my finger, its shine dulled by the weight of her confession. "And what about this?" I asked, holding up my hand. "What does it mean to you?" Mara's eyes filled with tears. "It means everything," she said. "But I don't know if I can be what you need." Before I could respond, the diner's door swung open, and a man stepped inside, his coat dusted with snow. He was tall, with a face hardened by years of resentment. I recognized him, Dale, a regular at the auto shop, the kind of guy who threw slurs like they were small talk. His eyes locked on us, and a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "Well, look at this," he said, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "The happy couple. Or should I say the happy triangle." My blood ran cold. The red X, the scratch on my truck, suddenly it all made sense. Dale's voice cut through the diner like a blade, sharp and deliberate, drawing the eyes of the few patrons still lingering over their coffee. Mara's hand tightened around mine, her knuckles white, but I didn't pull away this time. I stared at Dale, his smirk twisting something dark inside me, and I knew he was the one who'd left the photograph, the red X, the scratch on my truck. "Get out, Dale," I said, my voice low but steady, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. "This doesn't concern you." He laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the quiet diner. "Oh, it concerns me, Ellie. Concerns a lot of folks around here. You and your friends are stirring up trouble." He leaned closer, his breath sour with whiskey. "People don't like it when you flaunt your kind in our town." Mara's face flushed, but she didn't look away. "We're not flaunting anything," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "We're just living." Dale's eyes narrowed, and he pointed a finger at her. "You don't get to decide what's normal, sweetheart. Not here." The waitress, a tired woman named Linda, stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. "Dale, take it outside," she said. "I'm not cleaning up a fight tonight." He ignored her, his gaze locked on me. "I saw you out there at the old warehouse. You and that drifter girl. What's her name?" "Quinn. You think you can just do whatever you want, don't you?" My heart pounded, but I stood, placing myself between him and Mara. "You've been following us," I said, my voice cold. "The photo. The scratch. That was you." Dale's smile widened, but he didn't deny it. "Someone's got to keep an eye on things," he said. "Make sure this town stays right." Mara stood beside me, her shoulder brushing mine. "You don't get to decide what's right," she said, her voice stronger now. "Not for us." For a moment I thought he'd swing, his fists clenched at his sides. But Linda stepped in again, her voice sharp. "Dale," I said out. "Now." He hesitated, then spat on the floor and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The diner fell silent, the weight of his words lingering like smoke. Mara sank back into the booth, her hands shaking, and I sat across from her, my mind racing. "He's dangerous, Ellie," she whispered. "What if he comes after us again?" I didn't have an answer, not yet. All I knew was that Dale's hatred was a mirror of the town's undercurrent, the quiet bigotry we'd tried to ignore. I reached for Mara's hand, the ring on my finger catching the diner's dim light. "We'll deal with him," I said. "Together." She nodded, but her eyes were distant, still grappling with the truth she'd confessed. I wanted to hold her, to promise everything would be okay, but the photograph's red X burned in my memory, a warning I couldn't ignore. We left the diner and found Quinn waiting outside, leaning against my truck, her crowbar still in hand. "Trouble?" she asked, her eyes flicking to the diner's door. "Dale," I said. "He's been watching us. Left a little gift at the warehouse." Quinn's jaw tightened. "I know him," she said. "He's the kind who thinks hate's a personality trait. We need to watch our backs." The three of us stood there, snow falling around us, bound by a fragile thread of trust and fear. I looked at Mara, her face pale but resolute, and Quinn, her defiance a shield against the world. For the first time I saw them not as rivals, but as two parts of a story I didn't fully understand. "Let's go to my place," I said. "We need a plan." My apartment was small, cluttered with tools and books, a sanctuary Mara and I had built together. But as we sat around the kitchen table, the air felt different, charged with unspoken truths. Quinn sat apart, her eyes on the window, while Mara traced circles on the table with her finger. We need to figure out what Dale wants, I said, breaking the silence. And why he's targeting us. Quinn leaned forward, her voice low. He's not just targeting you, Ellie. He's targeting what you represent. People like him, they don't like change. And we're change. Mara looked up, her eyes meeting Quinn's, and I saw something pass between them. A shared understanding I wasn't part of. It stung, but I pushed it down. So what do we do? I asked. Go to the police? Quinn snorted. You think they'll help? Half the cops in this town drink with Dale. We handle this ourselves. Mara's voice was quiet but firm. I don't want to hide anymore, she said. Not from him, not from anyone. But I don't know how to fight this. I reached for her hand, my thumb brushing over her knuckles. We fight by staying, I said. By not letting him win. But even as I said it, I wondered if staying was enough. The ring on my finger felt like a question now, not a promise, and I didn't know if Mara's heart was still mine to hold. The kitchen table felt like a war room, the dim light casting shadows that danced across Mara's face as she stared at her hands. Quinn paced near the window, her energy restless, while I tried to anchor myself to the familiar. The creak of the floorboards, the smell of motor oil on my jacket. But nothing felt familiar anymore, not with Dale's threat looming and Mara's confession hanging between us. We can't just wait for him to make the next move, Quinn said, stopping to lean against the counter. Guys like Dale don't stop. They escalate. Mara's voice was barely a whisper. What if he hurts someone? What if he hurts you, Ellie? I met her eyes, searching for the woman I'd loved through countless winters, but all I saw was fear. He won't, I said, more to convince myself than her. We're smarter than him. Quinn pulled the crumpled photograph from her pocket, smoothing it out on the table. The red X over my face seemed to pulse in the low light. This isn't just about smarts, she said. He's angry. Angry enough to stalk us, to leave this. We need to know why. I leaned back, my mind racing through the faces of our town, the whispers I'd ignored. Dale had always been a loudmouth, tossing slurs at the shop when he thought no one was listening. But this was different, calculated, personal. He's been at the shop a lot lately, I said. Asking about you, Mara. I thought he was just being nosy. Mara's eyes widened. Me? Why? Maybe he saw you with Quinn, I said, the words tasting bitter. Maybe he didn't like it. Quinn's laugh was sharp, humorless. He's not the only one. This town's got a long memory for grudges. I've seen it before, people like him, they think they're protecting something. Their idea of normal. Mara's hands trembled, and she clasped them together. I just wanted to be happy, she said. I didn't think it would come to this. Her words hit me hard. A reminder of the life we'd planned before Quinn, before the warehouse, before the red X. I wanted to reach for her, to promise I could fix this, but the ring on my finger felt like a lie. We'll figure it out, I said instead, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Quinn's eyes softened as she looked at Mara. You don't have to do this alone, she said. I'm here. Even if I'm leaving, I'm not leaving you to face this by yourself. Mara's gaze flickered to Quinn, and for a moment, I felt like an outsider in my own home. But then she turned to me, her eyes pleading. Ellie, I don't want to lose you. I need you to know that. I nodded, but the words I wanted to say stuck in my throat. Instead I stood. We need to talk to someone who knows Dale, I said. Someone who can tell us what he's planning. Quinn raised an eyebrow. You got someone in mind? Linda, I said. The waitress at the diner. She's known Dale since high school. If anyone's heard him running his mouth, it's her. We drove back to the diner, the snow still falling, the world a blur of white. Inside, Linda was wiping down the counter, her face lined with exhaustion. She looked up as we entered, her eyes narrowing. You girls okay? She asked. Dale didn't come back, did he? Not yet, I said, sliding onto a stool. But we need to know what he's been saying, Linda. About us. About anything. She sighed, setting her rag down. Dale's always been trouble, she said. But lately he's been worse. Talking about cleaning up the town, about people who don't belong. I heard him mention you, Ellie, a couple weeks ago. Said you and Mara were unnatural. Mara flinched and I reached for her hand under the counter, squeezing it. Did he say anything about following us? I asked. Linda hesitated, then nodded. He was in here last week drunk, bragging about keeping an eye on the freaks. I didn't think much of it, Dale's always talking big. But after tonight, Quinn leaned forward, her voice low. He left a photo at the warehouse. Marked Ellie's face. You know anything about that? Linda's face paled. No, but God, Ellie, you need to be careful. Dale's got friends, the kind who don't mind getting their hands dirty. My stomach twisted, but I kept my voice steady. Thanks, Linda. If you hear anything else, let us know. Back in the truck, the air felt heavier, the weight of Dale's hatred pressing down on us. Mara stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass. I'm scared, Ellie, she admitted. Not just of Dale. Of everything. Of losing you, of losing myself. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, that love could conquer anything. But the words felt hollow. Instead, I started the engine. We're not losing anything, I said. Not tonight. But as we drove through the snow, the red X lingered in my mind, a promise of trouble we couldn't outrun. The snow fell thicker now, blanketing the town in a silence that felt like a held breath. I drove us back to my apartment, the truck's tires crunching through the drifts, my hands gripping the wheel to keep them from shaking. Mara sat beside me, her face a mask of worry, while Quinn stared out the back window, her crowbar resting against her shoulder like a soldier's rifle. We can't stay here, Quinn said as we pulled into the driveway. If Dale's watching, he knows where you live. I cut the engine, the sudden quiet deafening. Where else are we supposed to go? I asked. This is my home. Our home. I looked at Mara, hoping for some spark of agreement, but she just stared at her hands, the weight of her silence crushing. We could go to my place, Quinn offered. It's just a room at the motel, but it's out of town. Less chance of him finding us. Mara's voice was soft, almost lost in the hum of the heater. I don't want to run, Ellie, but I don't know how to fight this. I reached for her hand, the ring on my finger catching the dashboard light. We fight by staying together, I said. No matter what. But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. Mara's confession about Quinn, about her own uncertainty, had cracked something fundamental between us. And now with Dale's threat looming, I wondered if love was enough to hold us together. We packed a few things, clothes, a flashlight, the photo with the red X, and headed to Quinn's motel. The place was a rundown strip of rooms on the edge of town, its neon sign half burned out. Quinn's room was sparse, just a bed, a chair, and a duffel bag in the corner, but it felt safer than my apartment, at least for now. We sat on the bed, the three of us crowded together, the air thick with tension. We need a plan, I said. Dale's not going to stop. Linda said he's got friends. We can't take them all on. Quinn nodded, her eyes sharp. We don't need to fight them head on. We just need to be smarter. Find out what he's planning, catch him off guard. Mara looked between us, her voice trembling. What if we go public? Tell everyone what he's doing. The photo, the threats. People need to know. I shook my head. This town, half of them agree with him. The other half won't care enough to help. We need proof, something solid to take to the cops, even if they're useless. Quinn pulled out her phone, scrolling through her messages. I've got a friend, she said. A guy I met in Albany, works as a private investigator. He owes me a favor. I can ask him to dig into Dale, see if there's anything we can use. Do it, I said, my voice firm. But we need to move fast. As Quinn stepped outside to make the call, Mara turned to me, her eyes searching. Ellie, I'm sorry, she said. For everything. For Quinn, for hiding, for dragging you into this mess. I wanted to be angry, to let the hurt spill out, but her vulnerability stopped me. I love you, I said, the words raw and heavy. But I need to know you're in this with me. All the way. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I am, she said. I'm trying to be. Before I could respond, Quinn burst back into the room, her face pale. We've got a problem, she said. My friend says Dale's been asking around about me. He knows I'm leaving tomorrow, and he's been talking about finishing things before I go. My heart sank. Finishing things? What the hell does that mean? Quinn's eyes were hard. but there was fear beneath them. It means he's not just watching anymore. He's planning something. We spent the night in the motel, taking turns keeping watch through the window. Mara fell asleep on my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck, and for a moment I could pretend we were still us, before Quinn, before Dale, before the Red X. But the weight of the ring reminded me that nothing was certain anymore. At dawn, Quinn's friend called back. His voice was tinny through the speaker, but his words were clear. Dale's been buying supplies, he said. Gasoline, rope, a hunting knife. He's been seen with a couple of guys from the mill, the kind who don't ask questions. Whatever he's planning, it's happening soon. Mara's hand tightened around mine, and I felt her fear mirror my own. We need to end this, I said. Before he does. Quinn nodded, her jaw set. Then we go back to the warehouse. It's where this started. It's where he'll come. I looked at Mara, her face pale but resolute, and I knew there was no turning back. The wilderness was waiting, and so was Dale. The warehouse loomed ahead, its rusted walls barely visible through the snow as we approached. The storm had worsened, the wind howling like it was trying to warn us away. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, while Mara sat beside me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Quinn was in the back, her crowbar across her knees, her eyes scanning the darkness. "This is a bad idea," Mara whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "What if he's already there?" "Then we face him," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We can't keep running, Mara. Not from him, not from us." She nodded, but her eyes were haunted, torn between fear and the truth she still hadn't fully faced. Quinn leaned forward, her breath warm against my ear. "We stick together," she said. "No matter what." We parked a quarter-mile from the warehouse, hiding the truck behind a cluster of pines. The snow crunched under our boots as we moved through the trees, the cold biting at my face. The photograph with the red X was tucked in my pocket, a grim reminder of why we were here. Dale wasn't just a bully, he was a threat, and tonight we'd end this. The warehouse door was ajar, a faint light flickering inside. Quinn went first, her crowbar raised, while I kept Mara close, my hand on her arm. The air inside was colder than the storm, the frost on the walls glinting like shards of glass. We moved quietly, our breaths clouding in the dim light. Then we saw him, Dale, standing near a stack of crates, a gasoline can at his feet. Two men stood beside him, their faces shadowed but their postures tense, like dogs waiting for a command. My heart pounded, but I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the silence. "Dale," I said, loud enough to echo. "This ends now." He turned, his smile slow and cruel. "Well, look who showed up," he said. "The whole damn circus." Mara's hand trembled in mine, but she stepped forward, her voice steady. "You don't get to scare us out of our lives," she said. "Not anymore." Dale laughed, picking up the gasoline can. "You think you're so brave," he said. "But this town doesn't want you, and I'm gonna make sure it stays clean." Quinn moved before I could stop her, her crowbar swinging as she lunged at one of the men. He dodged, grabbing her arm, and the other man charged at me. I shoved Mara behind a crate, my fists clenched, and swung, catching him in the jaw. He stumbled, but Dale was faster, grabbing a knife from his belt and advancing toward Mara. "No!" I shouted, tackling him. We hit the ground hard, the knife skittering across the floor. Mara screamed, scrambling for it, while Quinn wrestled with the second man, her crowbar clanging against the crates. Dale's fist connected with my side, pain exploding through me, but I held on, pinning him down. "You're done," I growled, my voice raw. "You don't get to hurt her." Mara grabbed the knife, her hands shaking as she pointed it at Dale. "Stay down," she said, her voice breaking but fierce. "I mean it." The fight drained out of him, his eyes wide with surprise. The other men backed off, Quinn's crowbar still raised, her chest heaving. For a moment the warehouse was silent, the only sound our ragged breaths. We tied them up with the rope Dale had brought, using knots I'd learned from years at the shop. Quinn called the police, her voice calm but urgent, and we waited, the cold seeping into our bones. When the cops arrived, they took Dale and his men away, the photograph and gasoline can enough to ensure they wouldn't walk free anytime soon. As the storm quieted, Mara and I stood outside the warehouse, the snow falling softly around us. Quinn lingered nearby, her bag packed for Seattle, her eyes on Mara. "I'm leaving," she said. "But I'll never forget you." Mara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered, "for helping me see." Quinn hugged her, then turned to me, her smile small but genuine. "Take care of her," she said, and then she was gone, her figure disappearing into the snow. Mara turned to me, her hand finding mine, the ring still cold against my skin. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything. But I choose you, Ellie. I always will." I pulled her close, the weight of the night lifting just enough to let me breathe. "We'll figure it out," I said. "Together." The wilderness stretched around us, vast and unforgiving. But in that moment, her warmth was enough. Love wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was worth fighting for.